Okay, Senate agriculture back in action. We're running a few minutes behind. Blake got delayed, so we're gonna see if we can make up some ground. We gotta be out of here about 11:15, so we have time. We're gonna talk about some hemp and adult use cannabis, and we're gonna start our conversation out with our friend Graham. Graham's knows his way into this room quite well. And unsure about where the conversation is going to go. So help us out, Graham. The floor is yours.
Well, I hope to be taking up that floor for not very much time. First, Graham Streetfanaut, Policy Director, Rural Vermont. Unfortunately, the Director of Vermont Growers Association, which is the essentially trade association, the largest in Vermont for cannabis and hemp growers, has woke up with the flu this morning, so he can't be here and speak to hemp, and then to speak to sort of where the market's at on adult use and some of their information. He'd love to come back in next week and be in touch. But for now, we do have Jessie Lynn Dolan from the Green Mountain Patients Alliance. And we have Amy Lenz, also from the Vermont Growers Association, who can speak a little about hemp. And I guess what I'd like to do is first turn it over to them to talk about hemp, and then we can move on to adult use and hopefully find some time for Jeff.
Yeah,
next week.
Absolutely.
I'll pull up a second share for you guys. Sorry.
Oh, Jeff.
That's good. I'll call for you, Jesse.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks for having us today.
Yeah. You're very welcome. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. My name's Jessie Lynn Dolan. I'm a registered nurse. I was president of the American Nurse Association here in Vermont for the past 6 years or so. I also am on the forensic board. I was former director of the American Cannabis Nurse Association nationwide. I also started the Vermont Cannabis Nurses Association about 10 years ago. I've been here testifying for hemp since prior to the inception of the hemp program, specifically around consumer safety and education. I also ran a free hotline for the first 2 years of the cannabis program so that anyone could call and ask questions for free of a nurse. What we see is a lot of people who need relief and are on polypharmacy and also moving towards cannabis. So they do need someone to give them a little more safety and education. I was also a bud tender trainer for the first 2 years. I trained probably over 400 bud tenders in the inception of the program. I was a tier 2 cultivator, outdoor cultivator, and I had a hemp and CBD business for about 7 or 8 years prior to the adult use market as well. So really, I'm here to answer a lot of questions. If you guys have any of those, I did want to say a few things and then open up to Amy and you guys' questions. So I do feel strongly about consumer safety and education. That's why I come here. And I listened to James Pepper's testimony. I completely agree with the CCB stance on the hemp regulations at this time. I do want to dispel some myths and again, just answer some questions. The number one thing I do like to tell people is from what I've seen from the medical perspective, a lot of people are using cannabis, marijuana, high THC, or hemp for symptom relief, not to necessarily get high. So that's what I've seen with the patients and people who come to me for education. But as far as that intoxication and the potency of dosing that we're talking about with hemp products, I do want to be upfront. And from a medical perspective, let you guys know that 1 to 2 milligrams of THC is a lot, and that's a good starting dose. I know many people who take 2 milligrams of THC and feel very sedated, and that's Delta 9 THC. This D9, we don't have the research or the length of time to have the anecdotal experience information as well, let alone that long-term repercussions. So I do see it very differently. I'm also the mom, I guess now, of adults. All my kids are out of high school. But having kids that go through high school, having kids who are still under 21 or under 25 with that brain growth development still in place, as a mom, it concerns me a lot that we have things at gas stations and convenience stores that you can pick up that have 3 milligrams of this D9 without IDing them and without any education around that. So again, if you guys have any questions, I would love to help you answer that. I know, unfortunately, there isn't a medical professional involved in the hemp or the cannabis program, which is one thing I would absolutely advocate for. So I wanted to quickly just mention a few medical priorities to you, and then, again, any questions you guys might have. So one of the medical priorities we've been asking is to reestablish the symptom relief oversight committee that we once had. That was the way patients, caregivers, and medical professionals had a voice and an ability to share their expertise and experiences. We don't have anything like that right now. So nobody has had a voice, and we have not had medical professionals weighing in at all. With that, we have been asking to have the qualifying conditions moved out of legislation and into the CCB so that they can make those determinations only if they have the support of a symptom relief oversight committee with those other voices involved as well. I would love to see us add a medical professional to the program somehow, even if it's part-time, because I do feel that we're lacking that greatly. Overall, we need to increase education, especially the mandated bud tender education. It's recently been changed, essentially decreasing the amount of education that people need. A typical bud tender watches a 44-minute video with 4 slides on medical implications. I don't think in any way is that close enough. And lastly, I ask that you guys consider discussing with the CCB and rescinding the current advertising guidance that disallows and deters medical professionals from working in adult use without fears of that adult use business being fined, even when the businesses that have the medical use endorsement and are serving patients. So again, really my focus is safety, education, and I do support the Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition, which Graham and Rural Vermont is a part of, pushing or asking for direct market that gives more affordability and a local place patients can shop. I would support ag use and exemption. I'd love to end the opt-in so that we can disperse that a little bit. And public consumption, I see that from the point of a legal protection for patients. So if somebody's about to have a seizure or a panic attack and they don't own their property, they're illegally consuming cannabis, though they have a medical card. So I'd love to see some support in that direction too. So wanted to kind of be quick and brief, but mention a few things. So you tell me, I appreciate your time. If you want Amy to go or you want to jump in with some
Well, we're
questions.
probably gonna have a few questions too.
Sure.
Committee,
I guess I'm with any drug, there's constant testing and can you kind of explain what testing, what procedures, how do we get to where we get, because we have a federal government that says, oh no, but we have state, the state does, so the FDA doesn't necessarily oversee.
Right.
And so I am all about science. And so that if the science says that it can help with pain management and things of that nature, then I'm all for it. So so how do we get there? Where is the science? Where's that coming from?
Great question, and thank you for asking that. As far as testing and safety, that's the main reason I've been here for a decade testifying, is ensuring and begging mandated testing on products, whether that's hemp or high THC, and not just the potency, because in a way, that's the least of my worries, because you want to start with the lowest dose possible. My worry, especially with D9, is we're taking some of the worst crops in the field that are moldy and not good for consumption and processing them and then making them viable. So 10, maybe 9 years ago, I did work with the Agency of Ag and help create the protocol for the lab testing. And what the CCB is doing now for high THC marijuana or cannabis, I do agree with, and I think they've done a great job deciding how and what to test for. And I would ask that, or I would suggest that that's what we go by, which is actually going back to what we were doing with the hemp program when the Agency of Ag had it. The way it is now, there's no testing, there's no contaminants, mycology, like nothing being regulated or assured in any way. Especially when it comes to D9, we don't understand what those chemical conversions actually are yet, compared to Delta 9 THC, which is coming from the plant. And again, I'm with you in science. I worked at UVM research. on cannabis, on opioids. That's a lot of my experience. And I like to see the science and really want to make sure, again, we have the consumer safety. And if we don't have the science there, then let's halt a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's where we are with B9. We don't have all the science there. I will share personally, though, because you've probably heard of D8, D10. I'm a medical cannabis patient myself. I've had over 40 surgeries. I am grateful for cannabis instead of eating opioids and things like that. I tried D8 once just to try it. I was asleep for 12 hours. And I'm somebody that knows cannabis and honestly needs a higher dose of edibles to work for the amount of pain that I have. So it scares me knowing that this is on the market for our kids, really.
It sounds as if it's a bit of the Wild West. And that is scary. But let me stop there. Thank you.
Mhm.
Nurses right now are in very short supply. The fact that you are doing that, I want to thank you, and I wanted to get that out of the way. That is scary. I mean, we have no regulation or no, so you're making me even more scared. So thank you.
I don't mean to do that, but yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I've got 2 or 3 questions. You mentioned an oversight committee.
Yeah.
How did that go away? How long was it in existence?
Great question too. So that, as far as I know, that was in existence since the inception of the medical program.
Yep.
And for a couple of years, I attended every meeting, and the idea of the committee was to give an annual report to the governor
Mhm.
that they've met 4 times a year. These are the concerns, these are the things that are happening, and the overall idea.
Yep.
The last 2 years before the CCB took over, there was no report submitted. Once the CCB took over, the whole program just went away and disbanded. James Pepper and my understanding, the rest of the CCB has advocated to reestablish it and even gave recommendations as to who should be on that committee. We also gave the Green Mountain Patients Alliance and the Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition also gave recommendations who we feel should be on that committee, from a nurse to a doctor to a psychologist. Who do we need that can support the CCB and also be the soundboard for patients and caregivers? So my hope is that with the recommendations that the CCB already put in, we put in, that is something that we could reestablish pretty easily. And then that is the board I would feel most comfortable helping the Cannabis Control Board decide on things like qualifying conditions moving forward, or appeals for not getting their medical card, or just anything that comes up medically. I will share, James Pepper and I had a wonderful relationship. In the beginning, for the first couple of years, he'd call me almost weekly, and he'd thank me because they didn't have a medical professional to talk to. So that's why I feel strongly, especially now that adult use are serving patients,
Yeah.
and we're seeing more patients start to sign up again because we had a big decline in the medical program. I think we also, though, need to recognize a lot of people are not patients and are using cannabis without the support and education behind them. The number 1 person coming to cannabis is over 60 years old, and they don't want it to get high, but only about 20% of primary care doctors actually feel they even have the education to talk to them. So we're missing a big piece here, and that relief oversight committee is a part of that.
Was the committee fairly expensive to run, or was it just a question of per diem?
I don't think so. I think honestly it was all volunteer.
Okay.
And the one doctor and nurse that were a part of it at the time may have had a stipend or something.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think that's all it was financially.
And I certainly share Senator Major's sentiments regarding science, just having somebody take a look at something objectively.
Yep.
And making decisions. So the next question will make it obvious I don't really have a good understanding of the differences between, it's one plant,
Yes.
but it seems like, first of all, I think you could agree or not, if it didn't smell, you guys would be in a whole different world of because people wouldn't even understand what was going on next door to them.
Possible.
But because of the odor, it really, really, really offends people. And I don't know what the answer is, but anyway, that we can't change the fact that it smells. But help me understand, if you could, the difference between someone, because you made a point of saying that a lot of people don't use the high THC product to get high. So how is hemp different in terms of relieving pain than just smoking a joint? I don't understand the differences, I guess.
Great question. They work a little bit differently on your brain receptors. So we have cannabinoid receptors in our brain. We have CB1 and CB2.
Huh.
One of those
No.
THC lodges more to and gives us the effect. The other one, CBD, attaches more so to and doesn't give us that same intoxicating or
Okay.
high feeling. So it really comes down to our brain receptors. But the combination of the two, which most plants have a little bit of one or the other one,
Right.
the combination works better and mitigates some of the more concerning symptoms like psychosis or getting too high. That's why the synthetic version is more dangerous and scary because
Gotcha.
it doesn't have that natural kind of protection in a way.
Yeah. That's a great explanation and one I didn't know.
And we can go.
So there's
deep.
kind of like different sensors all.
And if you want to geek out on science anytime.
Okay. So my third question is, what exactly is a bud tender?
Good question too. I didn't know they used it after the name bartender. So it's kind of the same
Mhm.
idea. Instead of
Okay.
serving a drink, they're serving cannabis.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that. I was teaching.
Oh, see, I
bartender
thought
for
it was
years.
like growing it, or looking at the bud every day and saying, oh,
Dissecting the bud.
you need some more
Right.
water
Yeah.
or something.
So it's the retail staff that,
Okay.
that is selling products to the community.
Okay,
Just a fun name.
thank you.
So thank you. I agree with both senators as far as the where we're going with the questions. I agree very much with Senator Major that we're in a little bit of the Wild West, and also Senator Collmore is help us understand. We have gotten into this role of cannabis and hemp and marijuana, and we make a lot of wrong word choices because we don't understand, and we're getting there. But I think it's important for us to get to these level of discussions because we need to understand. And what we're trying to get to is to make sure that anybody that wants to grow these products are treated like farmers and are able to deduct and all of that. But then we get into, as if you were in here when council was in, Collier was in and saying, well, we gotta be very, very careful with the marijuana part of it because we've got $31.2 million coming from the federal government to combat flood recovery, and now you're investing in something that could jeopardize that. So we're walking that fine line as well. Ultimately, I think it's very important that we are involved because other than one other committee in this building, on the Senate side, nobody's paying attention to this. We have a great relationship, and I do believe a great relationship with the Cannabis Control Board. They don't see us as a threat. We are working with them and getting educated by them as well, and trying to get to the point to where farmers are asking, hemp growers especially, show us the rules, show us the maps, just give us clarity about how we are to operate. So thank you for the line. I also want to thank you for bringing the science into it, but also recognizing that this isn't your father's marijuana anymore. This is, and because there's a lot of people who want to pretend that it is. So there are important safety aspects that we need to be aware of. And again, we get all of that stuff. We're not in here to try to dispel that no matter where our thought process might be. And I haven't even asked the board about it, but whether you like marijuana or whether you're not, it's here. We're dealing with it, and but we want to be safe with it. But we also want to understand it because at the end of the day, what we're here to do is to help farmers be prosperous in raising a product. And we don't really care if it's carrots or marijuana. We just want them to be able to make a living at putting their hands in the soil. So kind of a long-winded little explanation about where we are as a committee, but
Can I comment one thing?
of course.
I love that you say that because that's how I speak with medical professionals is it's here, whether you like it or not. So we need to drop the stigma and go by education. And we don't see a lot of educated providers in the state, unfortunately. The other thing I think it's important to know with these drinks that we're talking about that have 3 milligrams of this D9, most people think of a drink or an edible as taking an hour or 2 or maybe 3 till it actually affects you. These drinks, the way they're processed, they're called nano, they work immediately. So if somebody cracks that thinking it's not going to affect them for an hour or 2 and drives home, within 10, 15 minutes, that could take full effect. So again, the education's not there, and this new product is that much more dangerous because of the speed at which it works in the body.
And those are synthetic, correct?
Correct. There are naturally derived from the high THC plant ways of extracting it that also now can work quickly in the body, but those are being sold at the THC store with hopefully the information and the warnings and everything like that.
Okay, so you've opened up a little bit of what's that last point that Senator Collmore had said. So you've got to spend a little bit of time, I think, to tell us that word synthetic.
So it is through a chemical conversion, and I'm not a chemist, so I don't do the extraction. It's a chemical conversion, taking the compounds in the hemp plant, like CBD, and changing that to the D9, where the plant already has the natural Delta 9 THC. It's not a chemical conversion, it's just an extraction, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I was gonna say I'm not a chemist.
May I add to that?
Yes.
I think it's easy.
Tell us who you are.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My name is Amy Lems. I'm part of Vermont Growers Association and the Coalition VCPC. I'm also a CBD topical manufacturer and have been for several years. And I'm a former tier 2 cannabis manufacturer as well as medical patient. So, D8, D9, and D10. D8 and D10 are fully synthetic. D9 is semi-synthetic. All of those are derived from CBD that comes from the hemp plant. Completely unregulated. All of those are completely untested and unregulated, which is where a lot of the danger is coming from. THC Delta 9 comes from cannabis. That's what we deal with in the adult use industry. So there is a really big difference
Yeah.
between the two. Does that explain it a little?
Yeah, no, it does. This is great education for me. Me too.
Unfortunately, that side of the doesn't affect ag. So it's
No.
nice if we can get an understanding of it.
How is it we allow it to be sold? I
Yeah,
don't,
that's.
So only D9 products are allowed to be sold, and they're regulated at 1.5 milligrams per serving and a maximum of 2 servings per container. Those are under the CCB.
Oh.
And so those are currently allowed. D8 and D10 are banned. However, they can be produced in the state and sold outside the state, not in the state of Vermont. So based upon my former tier 2 manufacturing license, I think I can speak very directly to a couple of issues here. One is the ability to go direct to consumer. It's absolutely needed at this point. We don't have an oversaturation of the market. What we have is a bottleneck. We have areas that have opted in and they are oversaturated with retailers. And then the rest of the entire state is a cannabis desert. So people who can't get cannabis near them typically do one of 2 things. They either travel a long distance to get it, or they buy it in the black market.
Right.
So when we have, and Jeffrey can speak much more clearly to the exact stats to this, but the statistics currently are that in Vermont, only 30% or slightly less than 30% of sales of THC products are in the regulated market. So 70% is not in the regulated market. It means that people are not having things that are tested and necessarily safe. We don't know what they're getting. And also, state of Vermont is not getting its excise tax. One would assume that we would want to expand the market into these cannabis deserts by opening up the ability for small cannabis manufacturers and growers to be able to sell direct to consumer. In Vermont, we have a very farm to table approach, and this does not change with cannabis. People like to know the grower. They like to know where their product is coming from. Even better if it's your neighbor and you can purchase it nearby. And it's not out of the realm of possibilities to do. Just like if you want to grow a business, you have to scale and make all of the requirements necessary, scaling down some of the requirements, but allowing for direct consumer sales by having the security, by having the point of sale system, by having reporting, by capturing the excise tax and sending that. All of this can be done on a smaller level. And it allows these farmers who are exiting the market at this point at a very alarming rate because they can't keep their heads above water. They're not able to get their product to market. It's just much more difficult for these small producers. They need another access.
How many growers would, if they went from farm to table? How many are out there? Do you have a rough number, maybe?
Ma'am, do you have those numbers?
There's
I don't
10,
know.
100.
I'm sorry, Greg Meeting Street for Policy Director Roma. I don't have those numbers. I do see here that Jeff said over 170 producers have dropped out since the market formed, but I think Pepper wasn't here with numbers and I don't have them in front of me.
But there was 170 that have dropped out. So the problem would be, and again, as soon as they pick the product and it goes for sale, that leaves our realm. Because now it's a controlled stuff, except hemp is not, correct?
Right,
Right.
I suppose, it
But
all
then it-
depends on where they are as far as their chemical composition of it, right? So,
And if we could do it for hemp, then it kind of is in our realm. Problem is, if you had 170 that dropped out and say that is half, so you have 300 something growers is having enough people to regulate. And that's gonna cost the state more money at that time to bring up a system like that. So I hear what the growers want. But until laws change, I don't see how Vermont's gonna be able, unfortunate, because my brother actually did hemp and he did it in a large scale and it kind of didn't work out the greatest. But he, it was a learning curve that he's like, wow, there's a lot more to it than people realize. And then he just did hemp. But if you have one cannabis plant, it's a male plant, is that female plant? They always raise the trouble.
They're all-
Shouldn't have said that on air. Exactly, but that can ruin a whole field from what I understand. That if they don't pull the plant down.
See what you just said, a male can ruin everything.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, so see, I actually, yeah.
yeah.
See, I was confused. I thought it was the female plant. It's the male plant that if it comes up in the field can ruin everything. Right. And
They must be killed immediately.
yeah. I'm sure a lot of people feel. So that makes it hard for our state laws to make it easier for the growers. And I'd love to facilitate, but it's such a grown.
The Ghost Center Alliance,
I think what happens, it crosses the road from us and goes to the next. I do have some kind of opinions of it going to the farmer's market, and I get that there are a lot of people that have been lost through the industry of, and there's a lot of people feeling there's too many people that are in the marketplace. I don't know if my comments on that are going to be very helpful. So yeah, go ahead, Grant.
Do you mind if I join my colleagues?
Please go on.
Where we sort of past hemp a little bit, or partially managing hemp and adult use at this point.
Do you want one of us to move, Graham, or you want?
No, I'll hold it. I'll hold it. I think we all have,
There's room.
we're all experts in our different realms. Linda, are you able to pull up that document I shared with you? So I can show that. Thank you so much. If we do want to stick to this direct market question for a minute on the adult use side, let's go there.
We like the education.
Yeah, I did just want to say, I really appreciate Justin and Amy speaking to hemp. I know Jeff would love to have some time too. He can give you more of those numbers. I just want to say, I think part of the symptom relief oversight, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the legislature wanted to maintain the decision over what were qualifying conditions themselves.
Yeah.
And not allow a separate entity to do that anymore. maybe part of it, but like, where is the power to be held to make these decisions?
Yes, but there's been also feedback from legislators that they don't feel they're the appropriate person because they don't have the education behind it. So,
Or the timing committee.
right.
And the second thing is, this sort of gets to the direct market thing, that's the THC and the CBD working well together from a medical perspective. What we're hearing overwhelmingly is that the diversity of the market is consolidating, and that retailers are purchasing high THC products, the products that have lower THC and a greater diversity of other phytochemicals, CBDs, and other phytochemicals, maybe you can correct me,
CBG, CBN.
et cetera. Those products are not able to make it to the retail shelves. So people who want less intoxicating products or products that affect other conditions, they're not able to find them as easily anymore. And in a direct sales universe, producers could produce products. We have a producer in Southern Vermont. She started producing cannabis for her husband, who is a veteran who experiences chronic pain. The varieties she grows, she cannot find a market for because they are not super high THC. So part of this is also just about what products can be on a market when only retailers and wholesalers are essentially making those decisions, and they're aiming for the most intoxicating products they can find because consumers know THC is what makes something intoxicating. That's what they're hearing.
And just to add, there is viable, real concern that the medical program in the next couple of years isn't going to even be here.
Yeah.
We don't have many dispensaries. It's not necessarily financially lucrative. So with that, we're going to have thousands of patients who do not have access to those lower THC products.
And lastly, I just wanted to say, like, one of the reasons I'm excited to have Jesse Lynn in here and the other committees, I think sometimes we come in as a coalition, we're advocating for things like direct sales and public consumption, and we're sort of viewed as, wow, you all must be at odds with the prevention community, or you all are sort of like way out there. And I think I just wanted to make the impression that I think more than anything, we are very much aligned with prevention. If not, in some cases, we have more stringent or strict guidelines we would prefer for certain products, as you've heard from hemp to hash to, and we certainly are not advocating for underage consumption, in some cases for the age range to be higher than it is for certain products. So I just wanted to communicate that and make sure people understand that we're not approaching this from an unscientific perspective or from a cavalier perspective. We're really trying to come in with science and use the whole expertise that our whole coalition brings in.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, thank you.
But I also
Yeah,
do think, Graham, to help with that some, what I was gonna say earlier is that a lot of you knew what you're getting into when it first started. And I get that rules can change and all that stuff. And there was a structure, and it was sold to the legislature as saying, okay, yeah, we're going to allow this, but here's the rules and here's what we're comfortable with, and there's where it's at. And I think that they're like any business, like the hemp business, for instance, all the people that got on the hemp business, they really thought that they were just going to get rich, and that they forgot, or, and I don't want to put it all into them because it wasn't all their fault, but they just thought that they could put a plant in the ground and they were going to make tons of money. Never mind that there's all kinds of other things that worked against them. The market's dried up or whatever. And I think there's a lot of people that misunderstood that just because you want to be a marijuana grower, that you're going to make a ton of money. It is a business model. You gotta run a business, and like anything else. So I think there's a lot of that going on as well. And I'm being very, very general about it, but I'm trying to explain it as well where some of the angst on this side comes from. That, okay, yeah, we agreed, but here's the box that we put you in. But it's also your job to try to expand that. I get that as well. So yes.
Could I speak to that?
Of course.
I have an MBA.
Yeah.
And so I got into this as already a business owner, a couple of businesses. And I had a business plan and I knew the risks, absolutely. But you also are entering an emerging industry with a lot of unknowns.
Absolutely.
And what was put in place for market structure had a lot of unintended consequences. Very specifically, I can speak to mine as a manufacturer. You make a product, you do your cost accounting. If I make it for $10, I wholesale it for $20, and then typical retail is $40. My goal was to put out a product that was financially as accessible as possible because that's my ethos. The retailers took my product at $20 and jacked the price to $60, which is a very nice profit margin for them, which slows the sales of my products.
Right.
It's a lot of what put me out of business, that kind of behavior. So those are unintended consequences that we identified, we brought to the table the last couple of years and let people know. And that was all but ignored. So yes, you do have people who have jumped into this believing that they can do well.
Right.
And you also have people that jumped into this fully eyes wide open.
Right.
It's what allowed me to know where the line in the sand was and exit before I lost my house or my kids' college money.
Right.
But I am concerned that we're taking a cavalier attitude about these cultivators simply because they are marijuana cultivators.
Yeah, I don't see it in that way, but I do appreciate it. I do understand where you're at, but I do see some fixes that are trying to happen, not issuing any more licenses for businesses to retail to come up and letting that market kind of adjust itself. So yeah, and you're right. There are a lot of unknowns and there are a lot of adjustment periods. And I don't think that this committee we like to hear about it because we want to be the education part of it. But I do believe that this committee, when it's all said and done, really isn't going to have the interest as far as once it crosses that road into the marketplace. I think it's important that we understand, what the product is and what's going on and all of that stuff so that we can help our farmers if they ask us to help. But I think that once it goes past there, I'm very comfortable to say it's a cannabis control issue after that.
Well, I actually think that we might be in some alignment on our proposal for direct sales. So Linda, if you would share that document. I'll go back to our number one, which is equity funding and excise tax allocation, but it's 100% in alignment with the CCB's Act 56 report 2025. It just report this. So that's all in there, and I will go back to that. But if you see number two, it says direct markets and value added for smaller tiers of cultivators and manufacturers. And what we're proposing, if we go down to page 2, the bottom, you'll start to see some statutory language and and some explanations about this. So we've included, if we're able to keep going, or maybe I should. There we go. So number two, if you keep going down a little bit, I don't have to read all of this, but we put a number of reasons. They took an extract from Vermont's Farm to Plate Food System Plan about direct markets, which essentially says if you want small farms, you need direct markets. It's from an agricultural perspective, we don't really think we don't have to have a lot of discussion around the facts of that matter. But if you go down a little bit lower, here's our proposal. In addition to the authorized blah, 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 tier 1 and tier 2 cultivators with a supplemental direct retail license may sell cannabis products using cannabis produced by the licensee, cannabis plants, etc., based on rules and regulations developed by the Cannabis Control Board. It goes on to say the manufacturer can do that as well. And it says that the Cannabis Control Board is to finalize rules for this license to be scale appropriate, accessible, and affordable, accounting for the limited production and sales of smaller tier licensees through a public rulemaking process by October 15th, 2026. It must allow for delivery, on-site, off-site sales. And then we put a number of parameters that must address: security, taxation, point of sales requirements and training, tracking, inspection, transportation. We put a fee in here as well. So I would just say that there's nothing in federal law that makes it any more right or wrong or legal or less legal for people to have a sale at a licensed retailer versus a licensed cultivator who has a supplemental direct retail license, if that were allowed under state law. And number two, we are more than open with providing the Cannabis Control Board with resource support they need. We've included a fee here for licensees. It's not automatic. People would have to apply. And we're going through a whole rulemaking process whereby the public can comment and the CCB could articulate rules that could then be approved. So we're not trying to be cavalier. This is something that we shopped around. The Cannabis Control Board has said they came to cultivator working groups meetings twice this summer. James Pepper did, and he said, we could have cultivators coming here that the CCB has always supported direct sales for cultivators that they think is necessary for a functioning market. That's sort of different from what they say when they come in here. So that's what we're putting out as proposed. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. We've seen some statutory language and perhaps understand that the whole process is deferring to the CCB rulemaking process, certain parameters, very small scale of producers who would be able to apply for this license to begin with. And I would also say these producers are already traveling around the state. They are driving from Derby to Brattleboro to Rutland and back again, oftentimes making no sales, sometimes dropping off free product for retailers, maybe never getting a call back. these people could be doing the same thing, making sales, having points of sales, having ID, having it all taxed, doing nothing different than they are already doing right now, except that that sale could be going directly to a consumer.
I know Steve's got something. I just want to say something first. I'm not going to stop any committee member from commenting on this. I mean, I want them to do that,
Yeah.
but I think as a committee in itself, for us to even try to take a position on any of that would be getting ahead of the Cannabis Control Board, something I'm unwilling to do as a committee, but I certainly don't mind the,
Echoing basically, what the language you got in that, the wrong committee to have that be, you know, that's sales and stuff. It's not from the field, so wrong committee.
well, at
At
least,
least introduce and to try to get that law changed. Not that would or wouldn't support this. I definitely give a look at after they've done, run it through the testimony and fact finding, you know, it's then it comes to the floor and we vote on it. But as far as, you know, we as ag still are going, we want from the ground, and as soon as you produce it, now it's off our hands. So we're not stopping.
we want to support you.
Yeah, we want to support you,
Well,
but
banana cannabis adult use is in your hands, then right? Isn't it all in the CCD standards?
right.
I guess
But
which
with the
committee-
law to get it changed to what you want is not this committee.
Which committee are you recommending?
I would say right next door.
Senate, we would definitely be Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where
I do
you.
think your support is paramount, though, just saying that you
Right.
support this. And from a medical perspective, I always love to just throw that in there too. If someone can purchase from the local farmer, like Amy said, they might not be taxing it up. So it might be half the cost for a patient, which is huge for access.
And twice more the profit for the producer.
And again, to be fair for myself to be comfortable with it, as an individual and not as a committee, I want to include the Cannabis Control Board. I would know more than I'd want to get out ahead of, Agency of Agriculture and some of their policy stuff. And that's where the relationship has been very great with Pepper and his crew. And is that, we've stayed in our own lane. We've been very clear about, as Senator Heffernan has just described, you know, you're in the field, you cross that road, you're into the next part of it. But again, as we've said, we don't mind the education of it either.
And after the fact finding and testimony, that's when I'll make my decision. As of right now, I have no issue with it, but I wanted to go through committee and have the gamut that it goes through to, and what our fellow senators relay back to us.
We appreciate the opportunity to give you guys the big picture so that you understand the situation and where we're going at it. And we do appreciate the feedback with
Mhm.
where we need to focus.
Appreciate the knowledge that you've given us the province.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna say,
I see your passion for it, and it's like you have a lot of passion for it. So, and we hear it, but wrong committee.
no, I understand. I think watching TV, just to be quite frank, it's really hard for us to understand how to get things done in cannabis and state house. Because, like, as you said, very few committees want to make the time to see this. We're very grateful for Senate Economic Development. They will be, but the House has also been really challenging. We have the Committee of Jurisdiction saying they will not let any other committees hear testimony on this, and they don't want to take testimony on it. So we're trying to get testimony where we can and leverage where we can.
Well, I don't know if we've run into that on this side of it.
No,
We
exactly.
certainly, I think that we certainly have other committees questioning about what we're listening to.
The Senate is very cooperative.
But we wanna, again, up until this year, or maybe a little bit last year, we hadn't really taken the position of, because I don't know that we really understood it enough to where we even wanted to stand, but I think now we're just trying to figure out how to help farmers best, whether they're growing carrots or cannabis. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think, Graham, you appreciate the openness that we've tried to exhibit in this committee, but throughout the Senate, I think, in general. Obviously, maybe not obviously, it seems like the federal government is beginning to move in a little bit different direction than they had at one point, reclassifying some of this from whatever the term is, like a Title I, Schedule
Yeah.
3 to Schedule 1. I don't know what that's going to mean in the end. obviously, if, I'm saying obviously, if it became legal nationwide, a lot of what we're talking about kind of goes away. I think we're still in this state in a opt-in or no, an opt-out,
Often,
opt-in, yeah. And I'm not necessarily advocating for changing that, even though it seems to me if you're talking about direct sales, that sort of flies in the face of that local decision. I'm a big believer in that local community making a decision of whether somebody can do something or not. And then I'm kind of wondering, I'm from Rutland. We've got 5 retail shops, from what I understand. I don't necessarily know where they all are, and I'm not worried about that. I mean, the sky hasn't fallen in since all this started to happen. But I'm told at least that they're not doing as well as they thought they might be doing. When this whole thing came about, and what is it, 6 or 8 years now that we made the decision, David could probably tell me. You know, the expectation from some quarters was, geez, there's going to be $100 million in excess taxes that we're going to generate from this. And all of a sudden it began to get lower and lower. I don't know what the state at the moment is making from our decision, but it doesn't seem like everybody that's in Rutland is. I think 5's probably, I mean, it's a supply and demand. As the chair said, it's a business. And if there's too many people doing the same thing and too few customers, it doesn't work. I don't know where the sweet spot is. Is it in Rutland? We have what, 17,000 people maybe in the city. Is 2 enough? Is 3 enough? I don't know. I don't drive by and see lines of people waiting to get in. That doesn't, you know what I'm saying? So I think there's a lot of different things happening here.
And I'd like to, and I want to take your question, but I want to add on to that is that maybe at some point in time, because we do have time, maybe you guys could give us give us some more education, if you don't mind. We're asking you to tell us what that decision would mean from the federal government from 3 to 1, and that as you go. So,
I just wanted to weigh in and reiterate the point that less than 30% of THC sales
Legal.
are in the adult use market.
Yeah.
So paying for regulation and making sure that the small cultivator manufacturer is doing what they should. I think that between the excise tax that they would gain from even another 10, 20, 30% of sales being in the adult use market would offset that completely. Not to mention the fact that, yes, we might have oversaturation in Rutland, but we have a campus desert everywhere else. And it seems pretty clear based on the numbers that people are either staying in or reverting to the black market, which we don't want. We want this regulated. We want it safe. We want everybody to be able to do okay with this. We want the taxes. We want the taxes.
yeah,
yes, my comment is that, yeah, I think the supply and demand equation is a little porous here, to say the least. If this so this study that Amy's referencing, Jeffrey can talk more about, it's a national study by a very well-renowned firm. I'm not sure it looked at Vermont, but it's saying on average, fewer than 30% of the sales. So we're talking about supply and demand. Supply being offered in the regulated space is, the demand is far greater. It's just that people are choosing to choose a different space for product, for personal reasons, for medical reasons, or otherwise. And that's sort of what we're pointing at. And we're not against towns having a choice. Again, when we opt to end opt-in, we are saying we are putting in opt-out. We're saying towns want to affirmatively say they do not want to have a retail location. They can still do that. But we would rather have them take that step than have to affirmatively say we want them in our town. And to answer your question around the direct sales for cultivators, we wrote into that provision saying that they would not be subject to the opt-in contingency, meaning if you're a cultivator, the opt-in rules don't apply to you. And you have that direct supplemental retail sales license.
And you don't feel that flies in the face of the opt-out situation?
Well, we don't support that either. We're asking for towns to go.
Oh, I understand.
And I think it's played out in such a way that, like I said before in committee, I think some of the regulations are creating the very problems we're looking at.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess I just also, I think part of the reason that we come to this committee too is some of our actually biggest progress we made on cannabis coalition happened in this committee, like the right to farm was brought in this committee and given to cannabis producers. And maybe that's a good chance to like move into the agricultural use of exemptions recommendations. So right below this number 2, the number 3 is the agricultural use and exemptions. And this may be more relevant to your committee, but given what you're saying, it still might not be. This is certainly about the field side of things. One, we'd like to, number 1 is around bringing what are currently agricultural wetlands exemptions into the outdoor cannabis space as well. And you can see there's language there. And we have one producer down in Southern Vermont who's ran into tens of thousands of dollars of issues running into these problems. And it's been a big issue for them. They've worked with their local agricultural people, but they're sort of saying, if you were a farmer, this wouldn't be a problem at all. And it's really challenging to know how to support you in this. We can bring her in to speak directly to this. And the second is to strike these municipal cultivation districts and setbacks for outdoor cultivators from Act 166, which were put in place a couple of years ago. This gets to what you're talking about, the smell. Right, we're just like, there's not much we can do about this. We don't feel like these setbacks are actually functional. There was a whole working group convened about this that a number of us spent a number of hours in 2 summers ago. And we had cultivators from towns, for example, Williston, saying, I am grateful when we have an outdoor cultivator, because I can say agency of ag, like this, we're going to the agency regulations on the side of this. This isn't a municipal thing, like the outdoor growers are exempt from municipal zoning. This sort of, he was saying that these setbacks actually don't affect smell, right? And smell is going to persist through these setbacks. There are other things we could put in place. So we don't necessarily think these are actually functional setbacks, and they actually have have the effect of putting people out of business than they do actually creating the conditions that we're looking for.
So Graham, are there other methods to mitigate the odor problem? I agree with you about and I don't know whether it's 50 feet or 100 feet, whatever that setback is. You could have it be 1,000 feet, that wouldn't make any difference. You can still smell it. But is there any other way to mitigate for a neighbor who's experiencing discomfort, if you will, from the smell?
I personally don't have a response to that. I know I've talked to people in farm viability too, and Sam Smith is interesting because he does a lot of work with small farmers and with dairy farmers, people who deal with other complaints around smells. And he's like, I live next to a cannabis cultivator and you can smell in my house. Nothing we can do about it. It's just part of how it is. Part of the air I smell it. Part of the breath.
You can't sprinkle perfume on the baby or something.
No, and to that, I would say, as somebody that has a medical condition, if you have Tide next to me in your dryer, I might get a migraine and end up ill and not have to go to work for the day.
No
With
kidding.
cannabis, I can smell that all day long. Even if I don't like it, it's not going to make me ill because it's not a chemical. So there is a difference for people medically. And then I would also ask, have you guys had people come to and testify asking how can they mitigate the smell of the manure?
Oh, sure. That's a constant.
We'll have to say the difference on, like when my brother, that the neighbors were upset, and it's like, if it's an agricultural crop, there's nothing they can say, but it never had been grown there before, and that's what Vermont's running into. It's a product that has, go down south when it was tobacco, and just tobacco has a slight odor to it as well, but that's been there for decades, not centuries. We're bringing this new product in. It's not a new product, mind you, but new growers in, and you're getting feedback from, again, the town that never had to smell this now. But I also brought up that roasting coffee, that burnt smell. Middlebury didn't have it before, and now Vermont roasts there, and every now and again. And what do you do about that? It's a byproduct of making a product that is worth selling. And if the demand's there, I guess that bite comes when people are really fed up with it.
We do have far larger cultivators of hemp in the state than cannabis. Like the scale which you can cultivate adult use cannabis is the scale which you can cultivate hemp, especially at the commodity scale, make a profit off it is far greater, and the smell is just growth products. I'm trying to think of what else is, some of this is relevant to judiciary. If you go down and go to the number, opt in, opt out, we talked about a little, the expungement is more of a judiciary question.
Yeah.
I think public consumption is also probably belongs in that realm. Home grow allowances are the next one down there. And I think that's something that would fit in this committees. And this is really about, currently allow for 4 immature and 2 mature plants at any given time. And we've asked to move that to 6 mature and 12 immature plants. And I think you've been hearing a lot about all the different weather contingencies people have been dealing with even people growing for themselves at a home scale, years with early freezes or frosts. We had a freeze at my house in late August, early September this year. These plants typically can't take below 26 degrees. If you have a bad disease year, just you can very easily have two mature plants that don't result in any good product for yourself at a home scale. And you don't want to incentivize people using bad products just because it's all they have. The other product is expensive. So this is similar to how it's in particular other states. This is the medical homegrown allowances, if I'm correct. So that is something we've come with a lot of people advocating for.
Graham, what number are you on?
That was you got it right there in the middle.
Yep.
7. This
And
was,
there's also, like you said, a lot of people who only grow once a year. It's not often medical patients are affording or able, for any people in general, to grow indoors. So you get one shot a year.
Right, as a medical patient, I grow outside and I lost aquifer because of the torrential downpours just snapped them. So lost
That's fair.
part of it.
That's fair.
which is why we're asking for like these more generous allowances too,
They need to be considered farming. Yes.
which we know is beyond your.
Well, I wouldn't say we want it to be considered farming. We do. We do want it to be, but we just, again, once the product is harvested, and then it's going, and one of the reasons why we're pretty stuck on that is that we have gotten some very weighty issues right to farm and some other issues passed, some CAPO permits and some stuff that we were told point blank. Why waste your time with it? By other committees or other people who could have squashed it. But we've proven to them over and over and over again, a lot like what we have with the Cannabis Control Board, and that we are willing to stay in our lane. And, we're willing to help, we're willing to stay in our lane, and we're not afraid of much, but we want to be respectful. But so we get a lot of stuff done that in fact, it's been said by the pro tem, agriculture and Napa Resources actually get along, and they have never got along. Senator Collmore has been here longer than all of us, and I don't know that ever we had worked as closely with them and got stuff done that we did last year that never would have happened before. And not even saying about who was sitting in this chair or who was sitting in those chairs, but just a willingness of all of us working together to understand we're going to try to do what's right for you. And to do that, we all have to get along. And so we've been willing to do that. So that's kind of why we are, pretty much saying, okay, no, listen, we're not going to, as much as we might have an opinion on it, but we're willing to stay where we need to stay, because at the end of the day, it helps you even more.
Do you find that this is within your realm?
I think it's important for us to understand it, but I think it's out of our realm.
The homegrown allowance.
Yes, I absolutely positively believe that it's out of our realm. Like to know it, and love the education of it. But again, I really just think that at the end of the day, we grow that sucker and harvest it. But as soon as it harvests it and gets out of that field, it leaves our realm.
And if you're getting more traction in the Senate, just get the bill through the Senate, then the House has to.
That's what we're trying to.
Okay.
Definitely. And I'm going to say, and I appreciate you also basically saying earlier that we really need to hear from the CCB on direct sales, because when they came to the cultivator work group, I eventually said, James, you need to make that clear meeting, because he was saying, you cultivators, you grow up and advocate for this. I said, we have been doing this for 5 years, and the CCB has been one of our major roadblocks. So we need you to come in and say, you're going to tell us to cultivators. You need to say it to lawmakers too. You can't go and say.
And I spent some time with this with Cannabis Control Board this summer, both on hemp and marijuana. I went to Sam Belovitz's farm up on hemp, and then I went to Rutland. To one of your dispensaries down there, and then went to a grower in Rutland, just between Rutland and Pittsburgh. So, we're I think you have to understand all what's there to be talked about. You have to understand it before you can make a position on it, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be whatever we can do to be the biggest help to all of you. Yeah, maybe we can't help on the farm stand issue, but hopefully we can help you on a lot of the other issues, especially the affordability part of it, as far as to, kind of what I had said earlier.
Thank you for taking the time to do that.
And I appreciate the cooperative because I think really like our coalition is trying to also demonstrate that like we are trying to bring in all the different constituencies from medical to cultivators to ag, to equity over time and say, let's all get on the same page. And that's what we've tried to do, bring me in here for 5 years.
And I also think it's very important to understand it as well, is because at some point in time, we're gonna have to vote on it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So we need to know.
And we're happy to get you any information that you would like. Absolutely.
I think the last thing that we were spending a little bit of time on is just number one. And you'll hear about this from the CCB as well, because it's in their report, but this overlaps with the economic development and the ag side. And if you don't mind scrolling up to, I think it's all on page 2. Thank you so much. I appreciate you helping me here. So if you're right down at the bottom of that, Linda, the number, you keep going down. Right, yes, number 1. You can keep going down, we can just center that section. This is all from the CCD Act 59 report, but over the years, we've really been working with the Land Access and Opportunity Board and our other partners like the Vermont Race Justice Alliance to explore what's the most appropriate use for the cannabis excise tax. As you know, and we talked about this from a grant perspective, James talked about this from the farm viability perspective, right? We do not have a lot of grants and services, technical support available to cannabis producers or businesses that we do for a lot of other businesses in Vermont across the board. So what the Cannabis Control Board is talking about, and what we've supported is this allocating $1 million cannabis excise tax revenue annually to the Cannabis Business Development Fund to be used for testing compliance relief, business advising and coaching, business improvement and infrastructure grants, and market access and public education. To be very similar to what we have to see is like the Intervale Center Farm Viability Program. We're developing a network of sort of providers who can support people based on their needs. And it would be expanding the scope of this fund to include tier 1 outdoor cultivators, tier 1 manufacturers, and these economic empowerment licensees. And for the second part is again, directing 25% of that tax revenue to the Land Access and Opportunity Board for things like down payment assistance grants to support homeownership and land access, financing and technical advising, seed and implementation grants, etc.
So now you're into a little bit on a gray area with us, but something that we would probably be involved with some of that because it gets back to helping farmers. And so that's where might have an interest in some of that stuff. And we would end up probably working on the committee next door on that. So, and letting them have the understanding that, yes, listen, that's going to help farmers because I think one of the frustrations that I've seen out there on the tour that I went to Rutland and to Sam's farm up in the Grand Isle was that it's frustrating again for these farmers not to qualify for grants and loans and deductions and stuff like that. So that would be something that we would be interested in.
Not to mention 280E, a different tax structure where they're,
Right.
Unfortunately, even less profitable due to that. And with the 25%, I always like to just throw in there, just like 1% for the planet. We could always consider 1% for the patients.
Yes.
Where is that revenue going now?
Jeffrey would be the best person to talk about how that whole equity, that whole stream of funding is being broken out in proportion throughout the government. Some's going to, I think 30% is in prevention,
30%.
which goes through a lot of things. It goes to after school programs, it goes to a lot of great stuff.
Okay.
But it's not going to any education for cannabis support or prevention or anything like that as of right now.
The Cannabis Business Development Fund itself has survived off of yearly $500,000 allocations, and last year there was not one of those. So I don't know where the fund's balance is at right now. Chair Pepper or Jeff would probably tell you all know the answer to that and speak better to it.
Well, as you're well aware, as soon as we take the money that's going here and put it somewhere else, we create a hole.
Yes.
And so I'm just,
Well, I think we've tried to bring up some ways we think we generate a lot more revenue because we think there's a high percentage of the market which isn't isn't being captured. And I know that there's some things you can't affect, right? Like the deductions, like there's certain things the federal government has said we have control over this because this changed. We can't. And that's why we do come so hard around some of these other regulatory reforms like direct sales, et cetera, because there's very few levers we have sort of used to affect the situation. But the ones we have, we really push it hard. Anything else you two would like to bring?
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for understanding. Thank you for the education that you gave us. Communication. We appreciate all of that. We really, really do. We have a great committee that are not afraid, and we work well together, and we hope that you see that we are trying to work with you folks.
I think conversations are always really good here. I really appreciate that.
And I appreciate your gratitude and desire for the educational piece. So that to me really weighs and matters so much. And I would ask you just to remember that as we're talking about trying to get this committee, the Symptom Relief Oversight Committee back on, because really most people in legislation don't have an understanding of this. That's even more important why we need something like that involved.
And just for rural Vermont, I know Stephen was in here earlier from the agency, and we're really excited to come back in with the coalition and talk to you all about this broad coalition of ag groups that has landed on our own language, which is not the same for the agency. It's to address this municipal exemption and right to grow food. So really glad to hear that this morning and look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get something done on that. Again, we are, if you were to watch us online, you're gonna see us into a lot of different areas. You're gonna see us on Tuesday. I think I've already kind of said it, talking about protecting prime ag land, and it's not just about protecting prime ag land. It's about protecting farmers, and it's about taking, you take a 300-acre farm, you got 100 acres of very valuable land and 200 acres of land. Well, I think that if we were to make sure that 100 acres of land, which the most valuable is the prime ag land, and then take the other 200 acres that's spent, we can turn that into more profitable land by restricting on what we allow to happen to that great land. All of a sudden you tell the developers, no, I'm sorry, you're not going to be on those nice big fields. That's not, but you can go over here. And I think we can help farmers up the value of their properties by just basically saying, leave our prime ag land alone. That's where we're going to grow food for our people. But we have all this other land that we used to pasture cows on that we don't anymore because the scope of farming has changed. But, it might be a little bit harder to build on, but it's available. So we have a lot of that stuff that we're hitting. Keep watch. You never know what these guys are going to come up with.
Or the chair.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great weekend.
I know.